very happy to inaugurate and to launch this great panel discussion that we have this evening.
The issues discussed today will be assessed and reproduced in a formal policy paper on the youth agenda for President Obama and Dr. Manmohan Singh. Let me introduce the panel.
This is why we are here today, to help our two countries formulate an agenda that is sustainable and important. Today's conversation will be held within 5 domains: technology, climate change, education, terrorism, entrepreneurship, and 21st century skill development. If you had face-to-face time with President Obama, what question would you ask?
Ask President Obama what he thinks the greatest challenge facing Indian-American bilateral relations will be in the next 5 years.
So what I think he would probably respond in a military and security sense. I think the response would typically come from nuclear security, security from terrorism. But what my hope would be that he would speak to the issues that I think are more pressing to India. Namely, it would be education and also battling political corruption, which I think is really one of the biggest problems that India faces.
The initial question is the issue of bilateral, and the answer is probably nuclear, but we would really like to see some education pieces on the agenda. That brings us to our next question that we would like to be asked, but probably will not make it into the official conversations.
How will India fund its rural economic development with donor agencies like USAID carrying back their donations to India?
Rural development, minimum wage, and global assistance. We're going to move over here to what resources, information, and data should the President of the United States have access to and education about?
Government should have information about demographics of India, especially if I could put it up in one sentence, that would be the balance sheet of India, the pros and the cons, so that he could analyze India properly in whichever way best he can. So.
He needs to know all the things that India has done without the Americans' help. Nuclear, space, our education systems, IITs, IIMs, everything that we have done in business.
I'd like President Obama to look at 2 numbers. One is the savings accrued by all American companies on account of outsourcing to India over the last decade. And the second one is the amount as a result of business generated by Indian companies who've outsourced their work to American companies.
As we know, India's Education Minister, Civil, is pushing an agenda for programs of collaboration with international, global, and American institutions of higher education. In fact, the central government of India is changing the law to allow these institutions to open campuses here in India. What do you think will happen? What is the negative impact, and what is the positive impact of these initiatives?
There have to be some changes on both sides. There are 100,000 Indian students in the U.S., which is incredible, but you have to think of which kinds of students are making it to the U.S. There aren't scholarships and funds for Indian students to go, so you're having primarily a wealthy group of students going to the U.S., which isn't exactly broadening the horizons of students who haven't been able to travel and see the world before. On the U.S. side, there has been a 20% increase just in the last year of students coming to India, but that's still only 3,000 students. I think that the first step would be to increase the number of Americans that are coming to India to study. And secondly, I think that there needs to be a push for Americans to learn about India in their curriculums.
We all know the Indian right to an education is finished with one set of a 60-year-old battle, and now all 14-year-old and under children in India have the right to an education. We also know that President Obama is pushing the race to the top. He's telling the American students that we need to achieve as high or higher than Indians. How do we see RTE and the race to the top as either collaborative or competitive?
It's more about getting more and more children into the race to begin with. How we do it or how the government actually implements it is actually a secondary issue but an important issue, because the way we actually instill quotas and ask the different government institutions as well as private institutions to actually keep certain number of seats for certain types of children from certain types of economic as well as social backgrounds is a tough policy to implement by the schools themselves. So implementation will be tough. And we've seen some of these types of implementation go really wrong. President Bush tried to do it with his No Child Left Behind Act. And as he also had trouble gathering support from various states. Same here, education is actually is under the purview of the state government. So actually implementing this is going to be very, very tough.